Hang on, I don't know if he's ready. He's going to open and then go close, I
Right.
think.
You want to open and close or what?
No, we're going into exec,
You have to
right?
open in open session. You have to
So
start.
he's going to open an open session. Are you ready? He's all ready.
So you want to stand and
Do whatever you want.
Get official.
Okay, all right, it's now 6 o'clock. We're in open session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as customary, reserve a moment of silence, please. Okay, at this time, I'd like to go into executive session with accordance of Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss the reputation, character, or physical condition or mental health rather than the professional competency of an individual, and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining and litigation position of the public body, I so declare. We'll be coming back into, after we're done in executive session, we'll be coming back into open session, and we will continue at our meeting. So we're now going into executive session. Oh, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Yes.
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 Again, we will be coming into open meeting after we're done with our executive session. We're now in executive session.
He's going to give you a signal.
We're now back into open session. Next on the agenda is to announce that this meeting is being recorded and televised by our local cable company. I need approval of bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of meeting minutes for open session on 11/19/19.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're now into a public hearing regards to a petition of
Maybe not yet. I don't
Not
see
yet?
them
He's not here?
They're not here.
They
All right,
may have been
well-
told.
Huh?
He was told 7.
So he's going to be here at 7?
Okay, so we'll skip over that for
Skip
now?
over it? Yeah, all right.
Public forum.
That's
Yeah,
true.
anybody here wish to speak in public forum? Nobody here? Well, that works that. Chairman's report. Frank, I have, since I wasn't at the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, you
Well,
were?
certainly Randy and I were, and, what can I say? We met, we dissolved.
That went well.
Right.
Well, I will tell you the dissolution of the committee was definitely, both towns agreed on it. And just feel like the best way to handle things, especially with this, the assessment issue being the major hurdle to get over, it was felt that the towns really needed to work in a smaller group and really just focus on that issue rather than tackle a whole regional agreement at this time.
Well, as I say, there's only 2 issues on the
Well,
Regional
toward
Agreement.
that end, we had informal discussions previously, and we're going to seek to do that again to see if we can get an understanding of what the issues are on each side and whether or not there's some movement for discussion, and then come back to the 2 boards of selectmen with a response.
Direction tomorrow.
Direction.
Okay. All right.
I do have a question for the board. There was a slight, I guess, imbalance of my recommendation and the chair's recommendation. And so I guess going forward, although he's not here tonight, we are going to need to have to clarify that
Okay.
within the board. So
When
We all need to be on the same page.
Right.
As
Before we go
far as,
forward.
yes.
Yeah, I
Now, are
agree.
you talking, what's your recommendation, what are you talking about in specifically?
Well, my goal is to ultimately get to the statutory method within our agreement. Now, we obviously said we're going to go statutory this year. I gave it's tough because we're not getting much on their end, and obviously we don't know numbers. We're not going to move, and what's the feeling of our voters? Would they be willing to ease Hanson into this? I guess where the chair and I slightly differed is if we were going to come up with something to ease Hanson into it, it ends up statutory. I think he was thinking something along the lines of another alternative agreement, which
Kind of being in the middle, not being statutory and not being per pupil.
and for myself, the end goal is the statutory method. I feel that is the most equitable method. I know it's a tough pill for Hanson to swallow, but it self-corrects. You don't get into a situation that you go 31 years under an agreement that has really shifted. You'll see a balance stay within this.
Right.
If the state deems under their factors, it should.
And I would say that I appreciate the chairman's desire to extend an olive branch, but I do, and I've said this all along, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens to do the best deal for them. And that would be the statutory, and we did take a vote on that.
I agree, and my concern also that I mentioned to Frank was, who knows how long the makeup of this board exists?
Right.
And if you present some other alternative agreement or method, the statutory method's still there.
Right.
Yep.
Another board could come in next year, you could be sitting in this same exact situation, going through the whole process again.
And ultimately, it would be up to the town meeting to approve it or not.
Right.
Anyways.
And that's actually, Randy, that's my concern as well, is that any year that we're in a method other than the statutory method, either town at town meeting could force us to statutory.
Right.
Right.
So it's that level of, I don't know, instability that hangs out there every budget year.
Right.
Right, there's some certainty with that.
Yeah.
But if we go with statutory, we know exactly where we are at all times.
You know where
It's
you
solid.
are, and it's equitable. If you
Right.
chart this out, you see the ebb and flow of it. I mean,
Right.
there was a period if you chart it back to 2006, where it actually falls in Hanson's favor, and has since gone to our favor, and maybe
Go the opposite way in a couple more years.
economic conditions change, values change, and now it shifts back. And I just, for me, I think it does protect our local aid and put it where it should be going. But I think it offers that balance, that you don't get into a long-standing situation where it appears things were one side.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is the town administrator's report. Frank?
Okay, I have a couple of things. Last week, or approximately a week and a half ago, we were contacted by the state because they're updating flood maps. Bob Curran is going to be the point person on it. We actually thought we had a process set up, and I got an email Thursday that said, no, it's going to change. But at some point in time, we will be updating our community flood maps. One of the things that we need to do is to adopt those maps through our bylaws. Apparently, when we last did the flood maps, there was insufficient time to do that, so the flood maps were adopted as part of the Board of Health's regulations, so we're looking to correct that this year. I also have, just have a little discussion regarding a process that we use to pay for snow and ice. I passed out a chart, and I've looked at the history of snow and ice. Obviously, we are going through some difficult mechanisms right now with the budget. However, we start every year in the hole, with the exception of 2 since 2007, where we've had a deficit. We appropriate 120 for snow and ice, and our costs when we haven't been able to pay for it have varied from 249,000 to 475,000. So we need to take a look at that and make a decision as to whether or not we should be committing more funds in order to get an even start to the year. I provided this analysis to the Finance Committee. If you look at the notes on the bottom, if snow and ice, instead of 120,000, were increased to 250,000, we would have had 9 deficit years out of the last 13. Still. If we went to 300,000, we would have had 5 deficit years. Now, it makes a whole lot of sense to say, let's go to 300, but we have to consider what that does to us in terms of impacting our current budget. So I'm not asking for a vote. I'm bringing it forward to say it's something we need to look at as part of our overall revamp of our budget process.
Okay, Frank, on that issue, am I correct in saying, I can remember way back when, we were only doing like 80,000 for snow and ice, because we could always deficit spend.
Right.
But I was always told by the DPW that if we increase that, we can never decrease it.
That's not correct. If the town increases its snow and ice budget, and we end up with a surplus, and we decide to decrease the budget the following year, we are capped at what that budget is the following year. It's just the limitation for the year following the reduction. You're not permanently enjoined. The statute allows you to deficit spend for public safety. So there's a penalty in there so you don't play with the numbers and
Right.
bump
So-
them up one year, drop them down
So
another.
if we do one for 300,000, we say 300,000, right? And then that following year, we spend 250. So we're $50,000, that just goes back into the
It's
general
free
fund?
cash.
Huh?
It's free cash.
And so the following year, if we wanted to go to 250 and then transfer out of free cash the other 50?
You can't
that?
deficit spend the
Yeah.
following year.
You can't deficit spend. You'd have to come up with the money from some other budget.
Right.
So it's something that it's been on my radar, and I just felt that we
Well, I mean-
needed to point it out. I mean, we've had 2 snowstorms, one last week, and as small as that snowstorm was, we spent $33,400.
Sure, they were up
My guess
today.
is we're going to spend another 20 this week when the bills are processed. So unless we're going to have a kind winter, we're going to be deficit spending this year. So I just want to recognize that there's an issue here.
And that just
And
hurts us
give
for
it
the
some
following
thought.
year.
Because it hurts us when we start the year. Because we're not starting at 0, we're starting at minus 120.
Yep.
This is kind of what Mr. Madden was talking about when he said we're spending free cash on recurring expenses. Snow and ice is a recurring expense every year.
Right.
But he did look at this and didn't make a recommendation on it. Have you
No,
asked
he
him
didn't.
why? Or
It wasn't part of his focus. It wasn't a significant part of the budget as compared to some of the other items. But it is part of an analysis we should be doing.
But I think increasing it, knowing that we've always spent it, it just puts us in a better position financially as far as the money is there,
Well-
and of course, it's going to come from someplace else,
You know,
but.
ironically, last year, Brockton underspent on snow and ice, and they had a problem at the schools, and the mayor made a big deal out of saying, hey, I'm going to give you another $500,000 out of snow and ice. I was asked how much we could give. I said, none, it's already gone.
So I guess, in theory, I looked into this, and actually a best practice is you take your 10 years average and
Yeah.
do about 80% of that 10-year average.
Makes sense.
I completely agree with it in theory.
How to use best practice.
Going back to what Mr. Madden said, my in this, I don't want to cut too much into the
Okay.
override evaluation, but it's just not there. We're either by doing it, I think this year, we're going to add to a deficit, or we're going to take necessary operational money and shift it to where we know we could, in this year, deficit spend next year. I think if we were to take this from the operational Article 2 budget, we're going to put ourselves in a position with another town department where we can't make that up.
Right, okay.
So that's my, but in theory, I wish we could, because that is one of the things that, I guess if we're talking strategic plans, this is probably one of the things that would be right up there.
Right.
Frank, next one?
Okay, Lathel Street, we foreclosed on a property a year and a half ago. When the town does tax taking and the tax taking isn't redeemed, ultimately, we foreclose. We go to land court and we file a petition to take ownership of the property. That process takes somewhere between a year and 2.5 years, depending on what's involved in it. Once we receive a final judgment of foreclosure, we own the property. However, the owner then has a year to redeem from the foreclosure. So you're never really out of it for a long period of time. In this case, the property became ours, and the redemption period expired last January. However, the individual continued to occupy the property and brought forward various legal arguments for not giving up. And we did go to court, we did get an order, and as of the first week of January, we will take possession of the property. At that point, we will begin planning to dispose of it. It will be, in all likelihood, it will be an auction. We have been very successful in the last 2 properties we've had with recovering either most or all of our money. I don't think that's going to happen here, but we should get close to whole, depending on whether we find someone willing to step up.
And the
So-
person that's living there?
They have vacated. The court has given us, we're stayed until January 1st.
Okay.
As of January 1st, we can move on the property. So just an update. And then finally, I think everyone saw a copy of the email from Superintendent Simonak that our SOI invitation is forthcoming. And I'm not prepared to talk about that tonight, but basically, we're going to start a process that lasts 270 days to come up with a plan for our middle school. So that's an indication that down the road, we can expect to receive support from MSBA, either for reconstruction or building a new school. It's a great time, money to talk about that, but we'll work it in because we always do.
Now, that's, what's the 602 Bedford Street? That's the middle school? No.
Oh, thank you. I missed that one. That is the BFI property.
Oh, right, yeah,
yeah.
right.
County Commissioner Sandra Wright contacted us last week. Dan had made a suggestion to her that this is a property that they might want to look at for veterans' needs. It would have to happen through the Attorney General because there's no process for us to take the land. But she did bring a consultant with her, and they did look at the property last week, and they're kind of excited about it.
Beautiful.
So she will begin what she needs to do to seek support from the AG's office, and it would be very nice to see that property taken and renovated and used. The sprinkler system froze last January, and the property did flood, but you wouldn't know it to walk through it. It held up very well.
Excellent. Now, I mean, we don't actually own it, right? I mean,
No, we do not.
Right. Will that be their, if they decide to use it, that's their, they will have to,
Well,
take charge of that issue?
It's technically an abandoned property. The owner is a corporation that's defunct, and its sole shareholder died 12 years ago. So there really isn't anyone out there to take care of this property. The reason it's lasted as long as it did is because the long-term tenant, as part of the deal to occupy that, used to pay the taxes every year. So it was transparent to us that there was or wasn't anyone there. Now that it's abandoned, it would fall under the Attorney General's program for abandoned properties. And if the AG chooses to partner with Veteran Services or some other organization to look at that property, I think it's a win-win. It's a win for the group, it's a win for the town, because we don't have a vacant property sitting there that's just aging out. Because someone's going to have to fix those roads after PA Landers gets done there. But I think it's a good thing if it works.
Yep.
So I just wanted you to be aware that there's something going on there.
Next on the agenda is budget review, Frank? Oh, all right. Okay, we'd like to get back to then our public hearing on a petition from Mass Electric Company and Verizon New England Incorporated for permission to allow National Grid to install pole 7 on Viking Drive in order to extend pole lines to Kenwood Drive and to provide future maintenance for the service to Heritage Park. There a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Vice Chair, may I speak?
Yes,
Just a moment.
Lisa.
Address National Grid. Members of the board, as you know, the town of Whitman purchased our streetlights just over a year ago, and we completed the project of converting all those streetlights over to LEDs. Because they are now town-owned property, we've had 2 instances from National Grid where they have removed our town-owned lights and left them on the ground as they are installing new poles, without providing the town with any notice of this practice. And what that does is that leaves us liable to anyone who comes across this arm and streetlight sitting on the ground, that they can be hurt. It's also liable for the town where our property can be stolen. These streetlight arms are not cheap. So I am here to ask, and actually Kenwood Drive was one of the lights that National Grid removed from pole number 5 back in August and just left on the ground. And fortunately, our DPW superintendent, Bruce Martin, drove by that area and saw the light sitting on the ground. We actually just reinstalled that arm at the town's cost. So I'm here to ask that National Grid be required to give us some type of notice if they're going to remove a light, and let us know they're going to remove it so we can have somebody there to pick up the unit and store it for safety, and not leave us in a position of leaving it on the ground and subjecting us to liability. And since Kenwood is one of the streets that was impacted, I'm going to ask that the board recommend that National Grid at least provide us notice if they're going to remove any of the streetlights.
So, Lisa, so what you're asking is that National Grid, whenever they're working on a light, and if they're removing a light and they're not taking it with them, possession of it, and it's staying with the town, that we get notified so the DPW can get out and pick it up?
No, it's
We
more
own the
basic
lights.
than that.
Yeah, we own the light, so
Yeah.
the unit is the arm and the actual light is the town of Whitman's property. So National Grid has gotten into the practice where if they're going to install a pole or connect one pole to an older pole, they remove the whole unit and just leave it on the ground. And they don't let us know, provide us notification of this, and they don't reinstall it. And again, that subjects the town to liability and also leaves our equipment out there for anybody to help themselves with.
Okay, and Frank, what are we looking for from that?
What we're looking for is National Grid to provide us with advance notice that they're going to remove a fixture from the poles because we purchased those fixtures from them. And frankly, I have to look into it, but I think there ought to be a provision to have that pole, that light remounted when the poles reset. But that's something we'll have to talk to National Grid about. But as part of this request to add a pole, we would like to ask that the board make as part of its approval a requirement that National Grid provide notice when they're removing our attachments from the pole.
Does National Grid have anything, do you have anything to say, sir?
With streetlight ownership, I think it's a new process, and I believe Dennis McCaffrey is getting on top of this new process. So in terms of notification, I'm sure he will be the one that's probably be the one on top of it and notifying the town. So for this job and forward, definitely I will relay it to Dennis and the streetlight in terms of ownership, and whenever we do exchanging poles, it'll definitely be notified to the town.
Okay, is that good enough, Frank? So do we need a motion of any kind?
To approve the placement of the pole with a notice to National Grid, voicing our concern about being aware of movement.
Do I hear a motion to that effect? A second. Any further discussion?
Just, I don't know if it's fitting to bring it up now, but it also, I think, opens, if National Grid just taking our lights, I mean, what if they were, I would just ask Frank to see what the process is behind that. If they should break one of the light arms.
Oh, right. Are they
who's liable
responsible for it? Yeah.
And the thing too is, she said 2 lights have been down at our cost, we had to put them back. Now, I don't think
Right,
we should
and
be.
that's what I'm saying, that
we
it
shouldn't
should
have
be
to
part of the
pay for that.
process.
We didn't
This-
ask for the thing.
This transition has been anything but smooth.
It'll be
And
worth it when it's done.
And it's not, you know, I'm not interested in casting blame around. It's been a very, very disruptive process to National Grid, to us. I shed tremor. I'm concerned about what's going to happen when we try to reconcile our bills. It's going to be a nightmare, but we'll get through it somehow. And we just have to make sure that we have an appropriate SOP going forward when these things are affected, because we're now responsible and we're liable
Right.
for those lights.
If I assume this is going to pass. If it passes, can we memorialize that in a letter to them?
That's what I suggested we do tonight.
Okay, do you have an issue with that? Is that fine?
No, definitely moving forward, I can relay and kind of get a better notice involved
Okay.
and better process, but this is definitely a new process, so everyone's just trying to, get their feet wet and all that.
All right. So any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
And we still need to approve the placement of the light, correct? Placement of the pole?
That was part of
Yeah.
the,
The motion
That
was
was a
to
motion for
authorize the
both?
placement of the
Right.
pole and
Yeah.
to
Okay.
that took care of both.
communicate with National Grid our concerns and expectations.
see.
I think that's the way the motion should read.
Frank, budget review, do we get into that or no?
Well, that's, Mr. Lamatino right now is the Budget Override Evaluation
Okay.
Committee.
Okay, so where we're at is basically the consultant has wrapped up probably his time where you're actually going to see him at our meetings. He provided a in-depth report, which I believe I sent to all the selectmen. I put out a date of January 13th to be our next Override Evaluation Committee meeting. I'm hoping to get a sense at that meeting, take some votes of if those are policies and procedures that the Override Evaluation Committee wants to recommend up here. What came out of this is we realized, yes, we're in a shortfall. If the committee chose to recommend those examples and guidelines that Mr. Madden gave us, we're somewhere in about a $20,000 hole, with an override pending possibly in year 2 and beyond. That number, was up to about $5 million, depending. And these are rough numbers. I definitely don't want anyone panicking, because it all depends on what structural changes and systemic changes we would make as a board and the finance committee makes. That being said, then the school budget came out the other night. I don't want to get into that too much, but I did speak to Mr. Madden, and using his guidelines where he figured out what town operations and along with the school, with what they had presented, could he put together a little something with all their asks, just to get that number. I think that's what the committee was tasked with, was to, if we are going to try and look for a 5-year sustainability thing and fix issues, what's the number going to be? And I'm hoping sometime after that 13th meeting, I'll come back to you and I'll have a number. It's not going to be a good one. I think that it's pretty clear. And then beyond that, I think maybe that committee is going to have to shift some gears, and maybe it becomes a policy and a strategic plan, and that could be our next step. And that's something Frank and I have talked about at these meetings, is figuring out these little things like snow and ice, deficit. We're going to work those in. So there's a lot of work to be done. We have accomplished a lot, but I'm hoping to come up with at least somewhat of a basic wrap-up after the 13th, and we have some numbers.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Randy. Next on is new business. Renew the following licenses for calendar year 2020, subject to the payment of license fees, no outstanding tax issues, the submittal of all required renewal documents, and the approvals where required, and the building and the fire department's okay with it. And it's going to be, I'll give you the list of them: all alcohol club liquor licenses, all alcohol packaged goods store liquor licenses, amusement live entertainment license, automatic amusement device license, Class 1 auto dealer's license, Class 2 auto dealer's license, common vicular license, common vicular all alcohol liquor license, common vicular wine and malt liquor license, congregation housing license, farmer's service pouring permit. Really? Okay. General on-premise all alcohol license, general on-premise wine and malt license, public entertainment on Sunday license, rooming house license, wine and malt packaged good store liquor license.
And of course, all of these are listed on the agenda and are available on the web to
Yep.
those who want to review the particular licensees.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, set January meeting. This meeting schedule.
Oh, you missed a little here.
What I missed?
Is it all?
Oh, one more,
There's more underneath the listing of those.
Oh, excuse me, you're right. Consider extending the closing times for club and common vicular license holders to 2 a.m. on Wednesday, January 1st, 2020 for New Year's Eve holding. Hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion?
We do this every year, right?
Right, this is a common thing that we do every year. All in favor?
aye.
Act on the resignation of Deborah Bonzi from the position of member of the Economic Development Committee effective November 26, 2019.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion?
When was the last meeting of the Economic Development Committee?
A long time ago. It was sometime in 2018, I
Yeah.
believe.
Okay.
We'd like to
Yeah,
re-stimulate
that would be my
group.
next comment.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Now, this is why Justin was asking. Take action to appoint Justin Evans to the position of a member of the Building, Facility, and Capital Expenditure Committee through June 30th, 2021, in order to fill an existing vacancy.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll abstain from that vote, I guess.
What happens when you show up at meetings?
I know. I'd already been the selectman's
List of
liaison
qualifications,
Yeah.
do we have?
to that.
All in favor?
Aye.
3-1
abstention.
abstention. Discuss management of the Animal Control Department.
As you know, the Board of Health has notified us that they wish to, can I use the word renege on their acceptance of managing the Animal Control Department as of January 1st.
Just you.
This is a department that traditionally has been managed by the police department. There has been some disconnects over time, and we obviously have to do something fairly immediately. And seeing there really isn't much of an option right now for reassigning, I would suggest that the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator take initial responsibility for oversight for animal control until we come up with a more suitable plan to manage it.
Okay, that's a temporary. You're
Yes.
saying temporary. Because I can understand that, but I also think that there's other areas that should be under control of it, but we'll discuss that when she's back off of her, back to work, and we come to some type of agreement, because I have feelings about where I think she should be put back.
Well, let's refer to the department.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so you need a motion on that, Frank, or just a...
If you're going to accept the Board of Health's relinquishing of its management, then I guess we would need to vote.
Right, and that our department, that you and your office take control of it temporarily. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Reluctantly,
Reluctantly, right?
Randy.
All right, I guess I'll be the bad guy here, but when we did this, there was a considerable increase monetarily to that department for this specific purpose of management and becoming a supervisor. I just would like us to be aware of that and figure out a direction with that.
Okay.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on that?
That's a good question. I'll probably be meeting with them after we meet.
Because
I'll certainly ask what their thoughts are.
they are aware of the
It was
switch.
an argument in making the Board of Health inspector a full-time employee had much to do with the management of the Board of Health, and that management included the responsibility for overseeing animal control. We're now recognizing their decision. Since they're an elected board, we really can't direct them to do anything, but we're recognizing their decision to, I'm looking for a word, dismiss, to relieve themselves of the animal control process, and that has some impacts. And
Wouldn't that be between the chairman and the Finance Committee to decide?
Well,
Come to an agreement of some sort?
there has to be some decision made somewhere. The board is the appointing authority for the health agent. The Board of Health is the appointing authority. The budget is voted annually, at town meeting. And there are certain responsibilities that we all have when we vote and adopt annual budgets. So that's a discussion that has to happen.
Yeah, and I think that the Board of Health, I mean, they're going to have to make a case for their department as far as what they need to not only the Finance Committee, but basically to do town meeting.
And that, I believe, is what the Finance Committee asked of them when they last met with them. I know the chairman has been looking at their operations and their process. The Board of Health maintains that they need a full-time health inspector, even notwithstanding animal control. So, like any department, a case has to be made
Right.
for supporting the budget that you request. And that's going to have to happen here.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion that we accept the responsibility of the dog animal control
Officer.
relinquished by the Board of Health and temporarily be put upon the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator and assistant town administrator temporarily as of January 1st, I believe the letter said, isn't it?
Yes.
And then a permanent department down the road.
Does that make sense, Bree? Comfortable
So
with
be
it?
it.
Okay, everybody
second
comfortable
that.
with it? Do I hear a second then?
Yep, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
School audit, Frank.
I mentioned earlier that we had an informal meeting with a couple of people from Hanson to talk about
Justin,
the
just this one and this.
the assessment and what we would be looking at in terms of budgets going forward. And a suggestion was made to have the towns of Hanson and Whitman cooperatively request or fund an operational audit similar to what we've done with the Madden report, where we take a look at the history of spending over the past several years, try and draw identify what the key issues are and what the rate of growth is and what it should be, and project going forward. The best way to do that is to understand the expenditures that have been made from year to year over the last several years. And there have been significant increases in those budgets over the past several years. And I'd say without seeing improvement in our offerings to the schools. So we really need to get an understanding of how we get there and how we go forward. And I suspect the best way to do that is to have someone independently go in and analyze that process. But in order to do that, we have to hire someone. Hanson has suggested and has voted to cooperatively with Whitman conduct such an audit, and they've voted to put up $30,000 toward a potential $60,000 cost. It's a lot of money, but there's a lot of questions. As we speak today, I don't know where the money's coming from. I did ask our accountant to take a look at all of our numbers and figure out where we might be able to draw some money from. But I would like to ask that this board authorize us to move forward with that planning. And that'll be something that we discuss when we have our next informal meeting with the representatives from Hanson.
I have a question. Are there companies that specialize in these kind of audits, regional school audits?
Well, yes And an audit is an audit. It all depends on what you're looking to do. Are you looking to see that the numbers add up? Are you looking to see how the money is spent? Those are two different types of audit. A financial audit says, you've spent money in this, and this area. These are your revenues, these are your expenses, these are your net assets, and this is your balance sheet. We have that. What we want to know is where and why
Yeah,
was it spent?
right.
Am I
Yep.
saying that fairly accurately?
Or if
So
they're
that's a little
spending,
different than just getting.
right, if
I
they're
mean,
spending the taxpayers' money appropriately.
I have 3 years of audited financial statements for Whitman Hanson. And in 2 of the 3, the numbers add up, and 1, there's a really odd exception where one set of numbers didn't exactly match. But that's not what we're looking for. We're trying to understand what the basics for spending are and how we're affected going forward. You know, we have identified what our costs are to run the town of Whitman. We have identified what those trends have been over the last 5 years. And the net result is right now we're saying that we have a structural deficit for fiscal '21 of at least $1.7 million. If we were to change nothing, we walk into '21 short $1.7 million. And that's without the numbers that were thrown out by the school last week. So we want to do the same thing here and understand, because ultimately we have to come up with an operating plan for our town that funds all of our operations, including educating our children.
Well, also, if you have an audit, you may have somebody, a fresh pair of eyes to look at how they're spending the money, and maybe there is a better way of working with what they have.
Well, and that, of course, is something that would come out of interactive dialogue with the region and the 2 towns. But we have to start somewhere.
Right. So you're looking for a motion to go forward?
Yes.
And
I guess I'd make the motion to match Hanson's commitment of $30,000 for a nuts and bolt audit.
Can we motion an amount not to exceed $30,000 for, yeah.
Not to exceed.
To audit the school district.
do I hear a second?
Second, and
All right, discussion.
I think if you look at what, our consultant did, it was
That's
definitely.
exactly what I was thinking of.
It was definitely, it's a different way of looking at things, and might not make everyone happy, but it's another option on how to do something. And I also think there's a level of transparency and trust that opens up.
Right.
I don't think anyone in that meeting was accusing the school of doing anything wrong, but it's just, if at the end of the day you're going to ask somebody for more money, then you better be able to say and prove that you've done everything.
Every way, anything possible to save what you
Right.
can and get the best
And
bang for your buck.
Right.
Yeah.
if you look at it from the other side of the coin too, that it's a positive way of looking at these numbers, that maybe all along this verifies that the school is saying, we don't have enough money to do this right, and this audit will prove it.
Right.
So, you can look at it positively as well.
Yeah, this isn't a slight on any of the way the schools have been run the last couple of years. This is just getting another set of eyes to see how we can take the growth that we've had and make it sustainable.
Yeah,
If there's
unfortunately,
anything,
it's
yeah.
going to be perceived as a slight, but it's not intended to be.
Right.
And I couldn't, through the process with the override, I mean, anytime I've had to call up the administration up there, they have answered my text on Sundays, and I mean...
Boundaries.
What's that?
Boundaries, no Sundays.
Well, that's when I have time to sit down and go over everything.
He's not suggesting you're answering the phone on Sunday.
Right, but I mean, I do want to say that it has been, they've been great. George and Jeff have been great to work with. Not saying I've liked all the answers I've heard coming back, but they have supplied everything, and anything we've asked for, I think we have been getting in a very timely manner.
Cooperation is good.
Yes.
All right, next on the agenda, discuss MSBA response.
Oh, we need to vote
SOI,
that.
Huh?
We need the vote.
Oh, we need a vote? Yeah, motion? You
Seconded.
got it?
Yeah,
Okay.
motion second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You got it, Frank. Very good, thank you, Justin.
Yeah, no problem.
Just trying to move things along before Laura yells at me.
And again, the MSBA
Yeah, response to the middle school.
response is the letter dated December 11th to Jeff Simonak from the Mass School Building Authority. The invitation, this is a 270-day eligibility period that formalizes and streamlines the beginning of the MSBA's grant approval process. And there's a timeline attached to it. We have a lot of work to do to get there. And the potential for this is either a new middle school or a renovated middle school. So want to make sure that people are aware that we've taken that step last April, and now we're beginning to address the reality of what will be involved in doing it.
You know what the cost of that's going to be?
Depends on what we design. It could be anywhere from 50 to, I don't know, 70, 80 million dollars.
Does the approval process change if you're going to do a renovation as opposed to build new?
They
pick it, right?
They choose. We provide, we have to do a feasibility study. And that, we have to vote that by next, no, it's in here.
Timeline in there.
We have to have an agreement for a feasibility study by February 26th, 2021. This is not happening overnight.
Okay.
This is a long process, but it starts with an analysis of the current circumstances. We can't jump the gun. If we don't follow their timeline, then the money we spend on the feasibility, and by the way, feasibility includes designs, a design for a renovation and a design for a new school. We don't get reimbursed if we don't follow their timelines. So we certainly want to be sure that we conform to all of the requirements and the particulars. There'll be a demographic study. Once again, we're going to try and estimate school population over the next 50 years. And it's a lot of work. But if you've been through that building, there is no question something needs to be done.
Now, the only thing the town currently, I guess, is committed to is actually bringing it
To town meeting in May.
to see if the town wants to go, so
Yes.
I think that's important for people to know, that that is the level of commitment we've provided right now, is that you will get the opportunity to say if you want us to go forward.
So in May, if the town says go forward, then we start down this timeline. So this is going to be a period of time where people are going to be asking questions, and we're going to be providing information to the public so that when they come to our annual town meeting, they can make an informed decision.
But then I'm looking at this middle school that's been renovated, and then I look at our DPW that's been built since the 50s, and they will say no to it. I mean, I'm not going to get into that discussion, but I think there's other priorities too.
Actually, one building is 100 years old, the other one is 50.
Yeah.
As is this one. 72, that building was built.
What? This one here, yeah. And when was the DPW built?
70,
Oh,
or
50s.
DPW was 72, the middle school was 77, one of those. They were built around the same time.
Really?
Yes.
That green building in front?
No, the green building's 100 years
Yeah,
old.
right, yeah.
When the middle school opened as the West Middle School,
Right.
I went into that school in the 8th grade. And so it would have had to have been 73.
Yeah, okay. And right around that time, we also built the DPW. A couple of years
Yeah.
apart.
And you're right, and Dan, that is one of the things plan on bringing
Our
up
capital plan.
with the override committee is that
Yep.
that is another project that you can't keep, the DPW, I'm saying,
Right.
is, you just can't keep pushing off. I mean,
Is if OSHA comes down and they put their thumb on it, you know, then we're in a bind,
Right.
which could happen.
I think
Yeah,
there need to be,
We need to provide appropriate workplaces for the people that work for the
Town
town.
meeting has to vote on it.
And there's a lot of work that the DPW does that they could do more effectively if they had better housing.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
as the override committee begins to wrap up, we should probably consider bringing in the building facilities and capital committee as well, because they're looking at multiple large
Right.
projects
We're
there.
in the same spot
Yeah.
we were in 12 years ago.
Exactly.
All right, discuss power options, energy saving program.
Okay, this is Lisa's pet project. As you know, we did a net metering agreement to try and save money about a year and a half ago. They have yet to turn it on, but someday it'll happen. And in the meantime, Lisa and I met with a company, Power Options. They're a nonprofit that's geared toward municipal and nonprofit organizations for power sale. If you look at the chart in your worksheet, in your packet, we looked back and calculated, based on what the costs are today, what a year's worth of energy purchase would do. Using the historic numbers and the current numbers, we would have saved $37,700. However, it's not a valid comparison because we're using today's numbers. So we went back to them and said, tell us what it would have been if we signed a year ago. And we did the same analysis, so it's less, but we're still saving money. It would have been 28,000?
27,000.
Yeah.
Could have paid for the audit.
So no matter how you look at it, over time, because, and I'm reluctant to buy fixed rate power because of the fluctuations, but if you look at it historically, it supports that option. So what I'm presenting to the board tonight is a recommendation that we enter into a power purchase agreement with Power Options. The power will be supplied through Constellation Energy, and they assume the responsibility for price commitment.
Okay. I mean, motion?
So moved.
second.
Second. As far as electricity goes, me personally, I have negotiated a contract getting my power much less than what National Grid was choosing. And actually, I even negotiated something less than last year. The new year, it's going to be less for me. I negotiated it, so this is a great idea. I mean, any way we can save some money, it's the way to go.
Have we looked at other companies as well, besides Power Options?
Not recently, but we have.
We have in the past.
We had Glacial, we had,
I do stereo.
another company.
Arcadia. Have we Arcadia?
Yeah.
I mean, if you would prefer, we can certainly go out and look again at a few more before we make a final decision, but
Is this time sensitive?
this is, well, it is, well, it depends on what happens with the rate and the heat and the oil. This, right now, is a good time to lock in. In fact, the price actually went down a cent a kilowatt during the time we were talking. I don't know where it is today. Do you?
I didn't look, but I just wanted to make some mention of the contract. The contract that we go. Some of the benefits from Power Options, since it's a nonprofit, there's flexibility in the contract. They limit Constellation's ability to raise the rates after a certain period of time without checking with Power Options first. They kind of act as our agent, so they are always on the lookout for the best option, best interest of the town. They also, with the contracts, Constellation cannot sell our power to anybody else in kind of like a third party. They keep it within Constellation and within Power Options, so we always know where it's coming from. So there were some benefits from going with Power Options as a nonprofit, and they came to us highly recommended by someone that Frank has worked with in the past. Sorry, the name escapes me, but just a couple of things about the benefits of the contract with Constellation.
What is the length of the contract?
It can be 1 year, it could be 2 years, 3 years. We were looking at
We were looking at
two.
a 35-month
We're
term,
looking at a
actually.
35-month.
They have terms from 12 months to up to, I think it was 72 months, and the longer you reach an agreement with them, come to an agreement, the better your pricing. And the 35-month range seemed to be the better pricing out of all
That
of
was
them.
the sweet spot on the
Sweet
analysis.
spot, they called
we
it,
did.
yes.
Yeah, this is definitely my wheelhouse. I'm thinking right now what the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that is going on statewide, what energy prices are likely to do in the next few years. But
See, what's
nothing
also
comes-
driving this is the state is taking a very aggressive approach toward alternative energy purchases. And as you know, they're generally more expensive to produce energy.
So, you need a motion on this, Frank, to go with them?
I would say that would be in order if the board is so disposed.
Did you resolve, do you want to look further into other companies?
No, I think the nonprofit route is probably
Okay.
going to be the way to go, and we've looked in the past. So yeah.
I'd make the motion that we use Frank's recommendation to go with this nonprofit for, you want to go with the 35-month plan?
Well, I want to look at them both before we lock in and see which one
yeah.
Yep.
is most favorable.
Okay.
I always get nervous about getting locked in.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, January schedule. I'm thinking maybe, how about the 7th and the 21st? No, yes?
Let me just take a look at
I was just thinking that I did schedule the budget override, and then with the hopes I would come here on the 14th and have something to really present and lock down, so if we could think that date.
1428.
1428. Yeah, the 20th is Martin Luther King Day as well, so we may want to avoid the 21st.
All right, so we can do the 14th and 21st?
28.
28.
28th, rather?
1428.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll give us some time to crunch some numbers before we,
all right, I will be,
I would expect the finance committee is going to be looking to talk with us around then.
well, the 14th, I'll be across the hall with South Shore Tech, Finance Committee, so I'll be in a little late. Other than that, fine, I don't have a problem.
If you're late, you have to bring the donuts.
Yep. Okay, next on the agenda is old business. It was act on the proposed gift policy that we tabled, and I would like to table it again because Carl is not here. The reason we tabled it before is we wanted a full board,
Yeah.
and since we do not have one again tonight, I'd like to table it until, we'll say, the next meeting. We'll have a full board. Is that okay?
Motion table.
Second.
Table? You're a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That being said, we exhausted the agenda. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Yep. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Darn, one thing I forgot. Are we still live?